Welcome to This Is Lit, a podcast where we drink and talk about our favorite books. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Casey.
And we're your hosts, so everybody raise a glass and let's get started.
Alright, Liz, what are we drinking today?
It's French.
Fancy.
Picpoul de Pinet. I don't speak French.
Picpoul de Pinet. Some kind of Pinot, I guess. It's a white wine.
Mizzen Botella. I speak Italian, I don't speak French.
2016, good year.
It's super fancy. There's a twist off top. From Soul de France, it's white. And it is supposed to be kind of a medium sweetness with citrus.
Now, Liz, you're more of a white wine person, aren't you, yourself?
If it's wine, I'm probably going to power through it.
Any wine is good wine, but white wine is usually sweeter, so that's usually what I go for.
Yes.
But Liz likes a little bit drier wine than I do. So.
Yeah, I do have reds I will drink, but I did not happen to bring any today.
All right, cheers.
Oh, that's not bad.
Pretty good. Very citrusy. I like it.
We're very lucky to live next to Lucas Liquor, which is the largest liquor store in the state.
That was a free advertisement,
yes.
by the way.
They're not paying us to say that.
So today we are discussing a book we have already read.
Yes.
The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And The Hobbit was published way back when, in September of 1937. It was Tolkien's first children's book, and it was very, very popular at the time, and continues to be very popular to this day.
Yes. Fun fact, the whole reason he wrote down the story of The Hobbit, wrote it down, was this was a bedtime story for his son, and then his son caught him in continuity errors, and so he had to write it down.
Amazing. That's kind of kids for you, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so The Hobbit, I don't know about you, but for me, The Hobbit has got a very special place in my heart. There's the kind of triumvirate of children's books at this point. There's the Lord of the Rings series.
It's not for children.
Well, yeah, but we start with The Hobbit. So you've got The Hobbit, you've got the Narnia series, you've got Harry Potter, which is the most recent addition to the group there. But they're all like fantasy stories for kids. I read all of them as a kid.
Yes.
Of them, the Narnia books were the ones I read first, but The Hobbit was very, very close behind.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably the first high fantasy I ever read, and has kind of led to a long-standing love of high fantasy that to this day I'm addicted to in movies, books, video games, anything I can get it in, honestly. So
I always had an unabiding love for fairy tales, and so I had somebody just recommend, or you probably should read Tolkien, you like it. And I'm like, okay, and I think I read The Hobbit the first time I was either 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah, about the same.
But I was weird because I read The Lord of the Rings first, and then went back and read The Hobbit.
I got one of those bricks of a book. It's like a really thick, ridiculous, and it was paperback, so at this point it's falling apart. I have it, I still have the same one, and it's rubber banded with a huge, thick rubber band around the whole thing.
But you can't get rid of it.
I can't get rid of it.
No.
I've got highlighting and marking in it. Which, by the way, that's an interesting question. Are you the kind to mark your books or not?
Oh, no.
No?
No. I will leave sticky notes and Post-it notes in them, but I will not ever harm a book. Ever.
It's not harm. See, we've got two ends of the spectrum here. It's not harm, in my opinion. In my opinion, a well-loved book is a book that's got dog ears, it's got highlighting, it's got notes scribbled in the margin.
My mother dog ears her pages of her books, and I just cringe. I'm like, use a bookmark! The poor book doesn't deserve this.
Oh well, no. I'm more of a marker in a book. Liz is not, apparently, but that's okay. We can still be friends.
Yes.
But yeah, so my old copy it's a good 4 or 5 inches thick, and it's got The Hobbit and all 3 Lord of the Rings novels all in one in this tiny print that makes my head hurt now. Didn't when I was 13, but I'm apparently getting old. So.
Yeah, I bought that one in high school. I've gone through. I've had 3 different versions of Tolkien work for The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I had that one where it was all squished together, but I originally had them all separately, but it was the Lord of the Rings books that had, heaven forbid, the movie covers on them.
I had those
when they were getting out, and so I read those so much they fell apart, and so then I got the big chunky one, and then that got lost somewhere between middle school and college. And then my lovely husband bought me very fancy hardback editions for our anniversary.
How romantic. Now, I think we're both in agreement on this. Movie covers of books are lackluster.
No.
We would much prefer to have a nice cover. My friend Kelly, who is one of my childhood friends I grew up with, and we were big into Lord of the Rings together. We went to see all the movies together and stuff when they came out. But she has a first edition of The Hobbit in leather green binding with gold embellishment that has dwarvish letters around the edges of it. Her dad found it at like a Salvation Army or something.
Oh, my friend Allie has one that looks exactly like that, but she bought it at like a little market, open air market in Spain, and it's in Spanish.
That's awesome.
I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Can I hold it?
See, books are not just about what's within them. They also, if they look nice, that is a big bonus as well. But The Hobbit. Let's actually talk about the story.
Yes, let's talk about.
So The Hobbit begins with Bilbo Baggins.
Yes, poor little Bilbo Baggins.
Bilbo is one of those traditional, like, hero's journey kind of guys. He doesn't really want to have an adventure. He kind of just wants to sit at home and enjoy a nice meal and a nice cup of tea, a nice smoke on his pipe. I mean, goals, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I want to do with my life. I mean,
Bilbo's a homebody.
He understands me on a deep level. It's like, I want to have adventures, but at the same time, I don't want to leave my house and put on real pants.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm more of the let's have as many adventures as possible type, but I understand the allure of no pants at home.
Yes, that is nice.
Definitely do. Nice. So Bilbo's kind of like that, and then Gandalf shows up.
Yes.
And Gandalf is the archetype, I think, for wizards and fantasy.
Yes.
Like, I can't think of anybody who came before. Like, there might be a wizard in, like, some Greek mythology or, like, Beowulfian type Middle English.
There's kind of a Beowulf. Tolkien was a huge fan of Beowulf, to the point where he would often come to lectures for his class dressed in armor, quoting Beowulf, brandishing a sword.
You need to
read his biography. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Especially since he's friends with C.S. Lewis and he has his little Inklings.
The Inklings,
yeah. And so they're all like, he's like, yeah, I've got new writings. They were like, as long as it's not bleeping elves. And it's like, guess what? It's bleeping elves.
It's always elves.
It's always elves.
But yeah, so he actually did a translation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. He did. So Tolkien's big into like the Middle Ages mythos and like
and he was trying to, with The Hobbit, he was trying to create a traditional English mythos.
Yeah.
He thought
I think he was successful.
Yes.
I think we can say that
because I think
succeeded.
definitely, because I think the only other popular English mythos would be King Arthur.
Right, yeah. And King Arthur, like, I mean, you know, you've got, there's a new reinterpretation every year. There's the musical Camelot, you know, they've got the TV show Merlin. But I don't think even King Arthur is as pervasive in popular culture as Tolkien has become.
That is true.
Like, I mean, I remember my dad telling me that he was, you know, visiting, I want to say New York.
Yeah.
And Frodo Lives, like, graffitied on the wall.
That's awesome.
In the 80s, like, when Tolkien fever was, like, at its pitch. Like, but, like, you can go anywhere in the United States and people know Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Yeah.
People know who Gandalf is. You can make references to characters from it without people even having ever read it. They still know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think Gandalf's the perfect example of that. Like, I mean, you know, there's wizards in that Middle Ages kind of mythology, but like Gandalf is the first like all-knowing sorcerer type to really be pervasive in literature.
Yeah, he's also that kind of character archetype where it's like he's the mentor for the thing, which is very pervasive even in Aragon.
Oh yeah, that's the one that just took all of the names from Lord of the Rings and changed them slightly. But it's a different story to be fair. It's a young adult novel.
But that's even true. Like, look at Dumbledore.
Yeah.
Fun fact, in the Harry Potter movies, there is a portrait of Gandalf in the headmaster's office.
Love it.
And
Dumbledore is clearly like, it's kind of, we're talking about, you know, everyone knows Narnia, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. Those are the fantasy, like, triumvirate everybody's familiar with, at least the gist of them, if they've seen the movies or they read the books or anything.
Yeah.
And, like, Dumbledore is very clearly, like, cribbing off of what was started with the character of Gandalf.
The wizard guide.
The wise guide, the wizard, and so Gandalf shows up at Bilbo's house. And is just being his weird wizard self. You know, wizards always kind of do that thing where they, like, talk to you, but they don't actually say what they want or what they're doing
it's all the pipe weed.
Yeah, I mean, or it's just I feel like Gandalf is a drama queen. Like, I feel I think he wants people to be like, what's going on?
Okay,
like,
the
why?
only bigger drama queen than Gandalf is Thorin Oakenshield, but we will get to him.
We'll get to Thorin.
We'll get to Thorin.
Yeah, but Gandalf comes in and, chit-chats with Bilbo, annoys Bilbo, basically.
Yes.
He just comes in and he's like, oh, isn't there a passage where Bilbo's like, good morning, and Gandalf's like, what's so good about it? Which, same, before I've had my coffee. But they have this great little banter there.
Yes.
They just go back and forth.
Oh, I found it. Page 5. What do you mean, he said. Do you wish me a good morning, or mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not? Or that you feel good this morning, or that it is a morning to be good on? All of them at once.
Yes, so Gandalf is clearly here to just be an antagonist. He just wants to annoy Bilbo. I feel like he's kind of feeling Bilbo out.
Yeah,
like
he's trying to measure his wit, so to speak.
He already knows that he wants Bilbo for this job, so to speak, but he's trying to fill Bilbo out. Because Bilbo, the interesting thing about Hobbits that I love, and this is, I was always, I love The Hobbit, but I read The Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, back to front.
Yeah.
I read The Silmarillion, all of that.
Oh my god.
And then I'm reading the appendices, I'm into the appendices, and the thing that always stuck with me was how hobbits in general tend to be homebodies who love comforts like food and family, and they're very sociable, but they want to stay at home. But even that's the general hobbit thing. And then there are different.
Then there's the
families. There's different families. So it's the Took family has always been kind of wild. They've always grown a little taller and traveled a little farther. And Bilbo has that Tookish
inclination.
Yeah, because he's got Took in his family tree.
Yes.
He's a Baggins, but his mother was a Took.
Yes.
And I'll take some more of that.
Papa.
So he's got that Tookish inclination. So Gandalf kind of knows. Well, Tooks are more likely to adventure than other hobbits.
Yes.
So I'm going to go for this one first, right? And so he's kind of testing Bilbo out here, filling him out, seeing if he's going to be good. And then he marks Bilbo's door.
Yes, the magic mark.
The magic mark.
By the way, I must add, if I painted my door a week ago and then somebody came over and scratched on it, I would be so mad.
I don't think Bilbo even noticed, though, did he?
No, but it's supposed to be a magic mark.
Yeah. Well, it has to be a magic mark because he basically just, and it's there's a thief who lives, a burglar, that's what they call him, a burglar.
Which the mark is a G in Dwarvish runes, which I used to be fluent in because that's how I passed notes to all my friends in middle school was we learned Dwarvish runes.
Listen, I would judge you a little more harshly, but I was fluent in Sindarin in high school. I printed out from the school library's printers 176 pages, which they were very angry with me. 176 pages on how to learn the Elvish languages of Quenya and Sindar.
We must have been very popular children.
No, not really.
No. But, fun fact, that's how my husband picked me up on our third date. And I'm like, I think I might marry you. And I did.
Amazing. Truly a romance for the ages.
I know, right?
But yeah, so he leaves this mark at the door, and the next thing Bilbo knows, there's just a horde of dwarves showing up at his door. Although I think it's funny, Gandalf clearly knew what he was doing here, because it's I can't just send all, 12 of them? There's 12 dwarves and then Thorin. So 13?
Yeah, 13 dwarves altogether.
I can't just send 13 dwarves up to this dude's door all together at once. He's going to freak out. So he's like, I'll send one, I'll send another couple.
Yeah.
So he's sending them in one by one. So Bilbo's just getting more and more bewildered.
Until they all fall in on his front doorstep with Thorin on the bottom. There was none of this. I'm epically showing up late with my hair blowing in the breeze.
Oh my god. So the Hobbit movies, you guys, sidebar. The Hobbit movies are bad.
There are a lot of artistic liberties that Peter Jackson took with the Hobbit movies. So, yeah, he mostly stays true to the ideas and stuff, but the Battle of the Five Armies was not that epic.
I think the thing that bothers me the most about the Hobbit movies is there didn't need to be movies, plural. The Hobbit is a children's book. Lord of the Rings, like Liz said earlier, Lord of the Rings is not a children's book. It is an adult fantasy novel.
And that is definitely needed to be 3 movies.
Yeah, it definitely needs the space to breathe because it's a lot of information. The Hobbit
does not need that much.
You could have done it all in one movie area. You could have done it all in one movie, and it feels like a cash grab to split it into 3. And frankly, just like there's a lot of it that I'm critical of. There's some things I like.
Yes.
There are some things I like. I like the casting of Thorin.
Yes.
Love
the casting of Thorin.
Thought he was really good.
I thought Martin Freeman made an excellent Hobbit.
Martin Freeman makes a good Hobbit. Yeah, so there are things I like about it. I loved Lee Pace.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Andrew.
Yes. Okay, he might be in the running for biggest drama queen of Middle Earth.
That's fair. He's pretty dramatic. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes, we are.
The point here is the movies are not as good as the book, and you should really read the book.
Really read the book.
Which you're going to hear that time and time again throughout the course of this.
Yes.
Read the book.
Or there's certain books that are going to be made into a TV series. You should read the book.
Sidebar for the next episode. So anyway, go ahead. Why don't you take up the thread of the story here?
Okay. Well, yes. All these dwarves show up at Bilbo's door, and he has a little conniption fit, which he should, because if 13 people showed up at my door, I'd be like, what the hell? I didn't even have time to vacuum the carpet. I need to vacuum the carpet, all right?
Liz is a clean freak. Her house is stupid spotless. Like, I have 2 cats and a dog. My house is a trash nightmare all the time. But Liz's house is always clean. So Liz is not the kind of person to, like, want people to show up unannounced. But, like, really nowadays, people don't even do that.
No.
Like, with Facebook and, like, cell phones and stuff, like, it's almost like there's not even an excuse to show up. And my grandparents will talk about it. Well, crime, crime. But, like, my grandparents will talk about, like, it wasn't that uncommon for them, like, the unlocked door and the neighbor comes over and just pops in.
Yeah.
Says hello. And, like, I don't know that I would necessarily want anybody popping in on me, but I'm a little bit extroverted, so I would not necessarily mind if someone showed up unexpected if I didn't have anything going on.
Yeah, remember that whole comment about real pants?
Right. True.
I need notification to have time to put on real pants.
And vacuum your floor.
And vacuum my floor because I have 2 dogs.
Well, anyway, I think we can both agree, regardless of whether we'd be okay with a surprise visit from a friend, a surprise visit from 13 strangers is not welcome.
It's really unusual.
It's never welcome.
To be fair, I think Bilbo handles it rather well.
With
even
a plum,
with the
Yeah. A plum, I would say.
A plum, yeah. Even with his little conniption fit. But their dwarves are all there, and they're eating all his food.
Which is rude.
Which is super rude.
You know, though, I would rather a dwarf eat all my food than drink all my wine.
That's true. Yeah, don't touch the wine. But yeah, and so then they start conducting their business as if Bilbo knows exactly what's going on, which he doesn't. Because
no one told him. The dwarves assume he knows, and Gandalf intentionally kept him.
Which I feel like that's 90% of my job. So, but he's like, what's going on? They're like, we just sang a whole song about it. He's like,
yeah, by the way, another sidebar, Tolkien and songs.
Yes.
So here's my main complaint. I like the songs because a lot of times they provide exposition in a much more efficient manner rather than having like 3 chapters of like backstory on like the dwarves and the dragon and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we sing a song and it tells you what happened. On the other hand, a song is very much an auditory.
Yes. And it's difficult to do written.
Yeah, and so like you see a song written, and like I remember being a kid and seeing these songs and being like, well, what do they sound like? And like as an adult, I would seek out like people would do their interpretations on like YouTube or the internet. They'd write music to go with the songs and sing them, and that's really fun. Yes. And I put a little bit of that in here somewhere, like people can get a vibe for it. But yeah, so like
it's a very good combo when I say
Tolkien writes a lot.
He does
of songs, and that goes back to the Middle Ages that he's so interested in.
Yes, because nobody knew how to write.
Nobody knew how to write, and so they told stories, and stories are easier to remember when they're to a tune. So a lot of times, minstrels and bards would go around and they would entertain by singing the history of a place that they were, or singing the history of a great king, or like Beowulf or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so Tolkien's very into that, and there are a lot of songs in all of his books, but The Hobbit has a ridiculous number of, everyone just stops what they're doing and sings a song. Like,
yeah, we're going to sing a song.
It's basically a musical.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, why has that not happened yet? I think it has, actually.
The Hobbit musical.
I know Lord of the Rings musical has happened. But, another side note about those songs is the Inklings unofficially often met at a pub. And so they would all get a little snippet and make up songs to sing. So he
Can
probably
you
was
imagine
just like,
being
yeah.
a waitress at a pub and just having like all these old white dudes in the corner just like drunkenly singing while you're trying to clean tables?
Knives spin the floor.
I'd be like, listen, you need to get out of my pub. This establishment does not tolerate
Or
loud.
you need to tip me super well, but they don't do tipping in Europe, so.
Yeah, Europe doesn't have tipping.
Yeah, so just, I don't know.
That's because Europe has a paid wage for waitresses.
I know, weird.
Not to get political or
No,
anything.
but it's gonna happen. We're not apologetic about it.
Listen, literature, the thing that's great about literature is that it opens the gates to talk about so many different things. Like, you can be talking about, like, the story of a book, but, like, Bilbo is, like, on the traditional hero's journey, and, like, on the way he learns things, and they're still applicable to us today. Like,
yes.
different things he learns. He learns about friendship. He learns about, you know, the politics of different courts.
Yes,
like, he's, you know, obviously
exactly.
in the Mirkwood court, he deals with the dwarf court. So, if something gets political on this podcast, like, it's kind of a natural leaning. Like, we're not going to sit here and rant about our political opinions. That's boring. But, like,
there are far many other podcasts you can listen to for that.
Yeah. But, like, politics, religion, you know, romance, friendship, all of that stuff is part of literature. And that's, that's why we love it so much, because it encompasses so many things into just, like, a small tome. And so I think it's definitely interesting. Isn't it good?
Good job.
It's a $5 word, I think.
$5 vocab word.
But yeah, so anyway, Bilbo and his, he hears the song.
He hears the song. They, he finds out he's supposed to be the burglar and the lucky number for this,
venture.
Yeah, this venture.
Capitalist venture.
Well, you're not wrong. But yes, he finds out, and basically he is convinced via the song and the map that, you know, this is going to be a grand adventure, and he's like, no, I'm going to stay home. Thank you very much. Until the next morning, when I kind of feel like Gandalf kind of tricks him out the door a little bit.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like, they've been waiting for you for hours.
So Gandalf tricks Bilbo out the door.
Yeah, pretty much. They've been waiting for you for hours. Here is your pack. And he gives Gandalf the keys to lock up, which, considering the events at the end of the book, I wonder how well he locked up.
Gandalf is very wise. Gandalf is also a space cadet.
Gandalf is also a manipulator.
That's true. Gandalf. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay, so it took me a long time as a child, sidebarring to another novel.
Okay.
So the interesting thing.
Yes. Gandalf is a space cadet.
Well, a manipulator, you said.
Yes, a manipulator.
And I remember being.
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, I remember being a kid, and I remember finding out, spoiler alert, how many times Dumbledore had been manipulating Harry in the Harry Potter book.
Oh, don't even get me started on that.
And it was like a huge betrayal because he came across very grandfatherly and like,
yes.
But the thing that's nice about Gandalf is I never doubted that he wasn't conniving at some point or another. Like, he's always been conniving, so I've always expected it.
You don't live 6,000 years without learning a thing or two.
Right. And so with Gandalf, I, was mostly okay with it.
Yes.
Because I already knew it was coming. But also, like, Bilbo wanted to go on the adventure.
Yes.
Like, Gandalf
he was
wasn't
just
tricking
doing his best to.
Like, Gandalf made it easier for Bilbo to make the choice. But I think it's kind of a very relatable thing. It's like, how many times have any of us in our lives been offered an opportunity to do something and been like, oh, well, that's outside my comfort zone, or, oh, I would have to, like, take off work, or I'd have to quit my job, or I'd have to move, any number of different things, and it becomes...
And some of us are far more adventurous than others.
True. And it's scary. It can be scary, like, even for people who are adventurous. Like me, I don't know, like, I'd say, oh, I'm adventurous, because that sounds like an ego thing, but whatever. I think I'd say more like, I like new experiences, so I'm less hesitant when they pop up. However, there have still been times when I have had opportunities arise, and I've still been like, this is scary, this could be hard for me, it could go bad. And I think it's very relatable. Bilbo's like, I don't know, I've never done anything like this before. It could go so bad. So I think it's very relatable for him to go through that whole process, but then ultimately decide, I do want to do this.
Yes.
I'm bored with what I'm doing now, and I'm not seeing any variety in my life, so I'm going to take this chance. And, like, honestly, it pays off for him in a big way. Mm-hmm. Like, if Bilbo had stayed in the Shire, he wouldn't be the character we see in Lord of the Rings. If he had stayed in the Shire, Lord of the Rings wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Or at least the way it did, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Which you can argue whether it's good or bad, but ultimately it ends with the evil ring being destroyed.
Yeah, and I mean, there are many, 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 many bearers who could have been far worse than Frodo.
Well, and it kind of comes out, I think Gandalf even says this at some point, that, like, he doesn't think it would have successfully been done by anybody but a hobbit.
Exactly.
Basically the ramifications of Bilbo choosing to go on this adventure lead to the
hobbits.
plot of the Lord of the Rings books, and Gandalf saying essentially, hobbits are very hardy folk, they're very dependable and loyal, and they don't want for a lot. They're not greedy. No. And I think that's the main key in, like, them being able to, like, successfully, like, bear the ring. Yes. Like, I mean, obviously there's a level of corruption that happens to anybody who has hold of it. Yes. But since they're, like, a humble creature that doesn't have a lot of power to begin with.
But I think the level of corruption that happens with Bilbo is just sass. It gets stronger towards the end of the book.
Which we should kind of jump ahead. We can't sit here and rehash the whole plot of the book. It's a very long book.
Yes. So I think the next big thing is the trolls.
Yes.
Yes.
I love that scene. So
I do too.
It's really Bilbo's first, like, trial.
It is.
Is Bilbo and the dwarves are camping for the night.
Yeah.
The trolls come upon them.
And take the horses. And so they charge Bilbo with getting the horses back since he's the burglar.
He's the burglar. Like, the burglar has to burgle back the things that belong to them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in this process,
here's the thing I like about this scene. Bilbo is almost considered in this a failure because he gets caught.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like he's magically good at everything.
Right.
So there is room for character development, shockers. So I really like that. You know, it's like, he kind of royally screws up.
He gets caught.
Yes.
And then all the rest of the dwarves
also get caught
because they come looking for him.
Yes, and then Gandalf has to save their butts.
And now this is I feel like this has become a trope at this point.
Yes.
But I feel like whenever it happened in this novel, it was a fairly fresh idea.
Yes.
And it was basically they delay the bad guys or distract the bad guys until they cause their own demise.
Yes, which is, in the novel, Gandalf's doing, not Bilbo's, in the movie.
Yeah, in the movie, I hardly remember the movies. Full disclosure, I saw the first one at the midnight showing because I used to go to midnight showings for the ones I cared about, but then not anymore. I was betrayed. So I was drinking. So me and my friend Marshall went to the midnight showing, and as you know, Liz knows, you listeners, you don't know because you don't know Marshall, but me and Marshall, our favorite thing to do when we were together is A, gossip, and B, drink. So we went to see The Hobbit together, and this was very shortly after I first moved to Kansas City, and I hadn't seen him for a long time. We were very excited to see each other. So we bought a huge Coca-Cola Icy, and we didn't want to pay for theater alcohol. Theater alcohol is expensive. So we smuggled in a bottle of lime-flavored gin. It was a bad combination, but it worked. And we poured, like, almost the entire bottle of lime gin into the Coca-Cola Icy.
Do you see the face I'm making right now?
You can't see the face she's making, but it's a pretty good face.
It's a good mom face.
It's like, I'm judging you. So we poured this entire bottle of lime gin into this giant Coca-Cola Icy. We're in one of those fancy movie theaters that has, like, the recliner seats. So I reclined my seat. It was a Ward Parkway.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, like, my feet are up. I'm leaning back in my chair. Full disclosure, people, I fell asleep. I'd been drinking. It was kind of a long and boring movie with a lot of, like, gaps where nothing interesting was happening. I fell asleep. That's, I think, the only time I've seen the first one.
Yeah.
So I don't actually remember the first one very well. I don't think I ever saw the third one. No, wait, I saw, because that's the one Thorin dies in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the third one.
Spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert for a book that is over 75 years old.
Yeah.
Thorin dies. Yeah, but maybe I never saw the second one. So, like, the movies are kind of, like, usually I'm the first person to go see a movie based off of a book, but the first one disappointed me so much I really don't have a lot of, so all the insight for that is going to come from Liz.
Yes, I went to the midnight showings for the first two. Yeah, so I know the movies pretty well, just also too I'm a giant BBC fan, and Martin Freeman is in everything. So
True. So in the movie, Bilbo is the one who tricks the trolls into arguing with each other until the sun comes up.
Yes, but in the book, it's Gandalf.
It's Gandalf. He swoops in. He's not even traveling with them at that point.
No, he's not.
I don't even know how he knows they're in trouble. Although Gandalf is technically, if you want to get into the Silmarillion,
since Gandalf is an Istari, right? That's how you say it?
He's a Maiar.
Maiar, thank you.
He's a Maiar. So if you get into the Silmarillion, which is less a novel and more a history book for Lord of the Rings and the surrounding series, it doesn't read like a novel.
No, it doesn't.
It reads like a history book. It reads like a recounting of history. So most people might not be into it, but it is really interesting if you want to know more of the backstory of Middle Earth.
And basically, it's like how elves cause trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, in that we learn about, the different, the Valar, or essentially the gods, and the Maya, who are essentially minor deities. They're like
minor
demigods.
deities.
Giandalf is one of those.
And he does have the gift.
Fun fact, Gandalf is one of those. Saruman is one of those. Sauron is one of those.
Mm-hmm.
He was the apprentice to Morgoth, who was the antagonist in the Silmarillion that Lúthien and Beren had to deal with.
Yes, if you read the Silmarillion, you really see the Catholicism influence.
Yeah, definitely.
Heavy.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting. One of my favorite stories is Tolkien versus Lewis. And
Catholic versus Protestant?
No, not specifically. Specifically, it's about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yes.
So Lewis brings this book to the Inklings, and he's like, "Here's a book I've written. It's an alternate universe, basically, an alternate reality where God
Portal literature,
yeah, which is one of my favorite kinds of literature.
I love portal literature.
Specifically, Lewis was saying this book is the thought process here is if Christ were to come to different worlds besides Earth. And Tolkien said, no, it's an allegory. Which, as you know...
Tolkien hates allegory.
It's an allegory. An allegory is a direct representation of something from reality or something compared to something else. So, Jesus, Aslan, Jesus dying on the cross, Aslan allowing himself to be sacrificed by the White Witch to save Edmund.
Yes.
Tolkien called that an allegory. He's like, it's an allegory, it's a direct allegory, and I hate allegories, so this sucks. And Lewis was like, it's not an allegory, it's a hypothetical situation where Christ came to Narnia instead of to Earth, or as well as Earth. Which, to me, honestly, is splitting hairs. It's a fucking allegory.
Yeah.
But they had this huge argument about it, and it's so funny to me. The argument itself is funny, but it's especially funny whenever you read Tolkien and read the Silmarillion.
There's so much.
The Catholic allegories within the Silmarillion alone.
Like, even just the history of a Balrog, it's like, that's pretty much fallen angels and demons.
Yeah. So Tolkien is over here giving Lewis shit about writing too many allegories, but he's just as guilty of that.
Yeah. Well, let's see, here's the thing. As a writer, there's nothing you read or experience that doesn't influence your writing no matter what.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, exactly. You can't separate yourself from every single influence in your life, because whether you like it or not, you will be influenced.
Yeah. Finish the bottle.
We finished our first bottle.
We finished the first bottle!
Woo! Fancy French white wine that we don't know what it is.
It's not that good. It's got a twist up.
Listen, Liz provided the wine for this particular viewing. And that's mainly because the wine that I have in the house is one of those big 3-liter jugs that I got. No, unfortunately. Lambrusco. Hey, sidebar. This is an ad for Lambrusco. Unpaid, but Lambrusco is the shit. You should try it sometime. No, I had $12 to my name. This was in between paychecks. I was broke. I wanted wine. Went to the drugstore, and they had this $12 3-liter bottle of red sangria. And I was like, I mean, how bad could it be? It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It kind of tastes like nail polish. The last time I drank it, I mixed it with cranberry limeade from Sonic to make it tolerable. So, suffice to say, Liz brought the wine this time. Hers is not fancy, but it's more fancy than what I have.
And fun fact, Kansas City spans Kansas and Missouri. So I'm on the Kansas side, which you cannot buy alcohol
in a drugstore.
In a drugstore.
Or a grocery store.
Or a grocery store.
You can only buy it at liquor stores.
Yes.
And you can't buy mixers at liquor stores.
No, it's a
you have
pain
to buy
in
them
the
at either
butt.
a grocery store or a party store. Like the liquor store.
Are you listening to me, Kansas legislature? Let us have wine and Target.
No shit, right? It's like I want to stop and like pick up, my basic necessities, but I also want to pick up wine at the same time.
Sometimes you need toilet paper and wine at the same time.
Rather than having to go to two stores.
Yes.
Anyway, on the Missouri side, we're much more lax. I can go into the drugstore that's literally 3 blocks from my house and buy a $12 3-liter, really, really terrible red sangria. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but if that's all you have, money-wise, you make it work.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was totally off track here.
Soon to be patented tangent.
So let's get back to the
trolls.
Trolls. So Gandalf tricks the trolls into arguing with each other until the sun rises, and trolls, as everyone obviously knows, cannot withstand sunlight. They turn to stone.
And they're a bit of a dum-dum.
Yeah. So he gets rid of the trolls. This is kind of one of the first times you see that trope of like delaying the enemy until they defeat themselves.
And see, then they go to the troll herd, which is where Sting arrives. But it is not mentioned.
Yeah, that's very true. So trolls hoard things that when they kidnap and eat people, they keep their stuff and they just hoard it. Even if they don't need it, they just put it in their like little pile. They're like dragons that way. They just hoard it. And so they have this elvish dagger.
Yes.
Called Sting. It's a dagger. It's not a sword. It's a dagger. But Bilbo is a hobbit, and hobbits are tiny, so for him,
so it's perfect.
It basically
that's
works
also
as a sword.
where the goblin cleaver.
Slandering.
Yes.
You're welcome. So Thorin, Gandalf, and Bilbo all basically level up their weapons at this point.
Level up.
They all get orc-killing weapons that glow blue whenever orcs or goblins are about.
Yes, because they are made.
Although I believe it actually says that they glow blue when goblins are about.
Goblins or orcs.
Like correct me if I'm wrong, in the Hobbit it just says goblins, and then when we get to Lord of the Rings,
goblins.
When we get to Lord of the Rings, because I don't think there's really much in
orcs
the way of orcs
in
the Hobbit. They're introduced in the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Because orcs are not, and that's another interesting thing. Orcs are a Tolkien invention.
Yeah.
But because Tolkien is so widely known in popular culture, they've become part of fantasy in general. Like they're accepted as a fantasy race.
Yes.
Like back in the day before Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings, it was like, oh yeah, you have your goblins, you have your elves, whatever. Yeah. Now you can say orcs and you don't necessarily mean Tolkien.
Yes.
But before Tolkien, there weren't really orcs. And orcs are...
He considered orcs people... Orcs were kind of what he saw... Like, the hobbits were kind of like the, good, pure... He's like, good is associated with being friendly to nature, and bad is typically associated with industrialization.
Since we're getting to this conversation, like, Tolkien was writing during the Industrial Revolution, so that makes sense. But there is another there's another really unfortunate implication of both goblins and orcs. There is a certain racial quality that is unfortunate.
Yes, that has been widely considered. Same thing with the dwarves as well, coveting gold.
So Tolkien,
and with hobbits as well.
A big criticism of Tolkien, and this is obviously part and parcel of his time period and when he was living and raised. It doesn't excuse his behavior. But the fact of the matter is, goblins and orcs specifically, they're dark-skinned. Yes. They have slanted eyes. They're
furry.
There's a lot of Orientalism and racism inherent in them. Like just because a creature is born to a specific race, it's evil. And this is kind of a problem within fantasy overall.
There's a hard line.
Yeah.
In real life there isn't.
Yeah, in real life, it doesn't matter what race you're born. You can be a good or bad person. Like, this is common sense.
Yeah.
But in fantasy, it's like, elves are good, orcs are bad.
With a capital G.
Hobbits are good.
With capital G.
Or goblins are bad.
With capital B.
Yeah, it's kind of a bad implication. And in modern times, you can look at it and critically, and it's in fantasy all over.
Yeah.
But Tolkien is kind of the one who started it.
I think we'll get more into the whole line between good and evil in the next episode with that book.
But it's just an interesting thing to note is that Tolkien did create this kind of problematic your race defines your quality of being, and I don't think that was his thought process. I don't think he was thinking because they are a race they are automatically evil. But Tolkien never went out of his way to be like, your choices are what makes you good or evil. He was like, oh no, you're an orc, you're bad.
Yeah.
which is an unfortunate implication. And like, if you transfer it over to real life, it's obviously not true. And to say it would be racist.
Yeah. However, with Tolkien writing during a large majority of his writings took place between World War I and World War II, and there was all that propaganda going on about the different countries and being very
isolationism was super popular.
And, yeah, so
nationalism. Yeah. It was like a rise of nationalism at the time. So yeah, it makes sense in the context of his time period. But like we said earlier, like the thing that's beautiful about literature is like its lessons span. They exist outside of time. So like it can be very good. Like you can learn lessons about friendship and adventure and romance, and those, but they can also be bad because Tolkien has introduced this idea that implication is there in your brain. You know, what you read and what you watch does impact how you think.
It does.
And if you don't engage critically with it, you can cause kind of a problem. So, you know, engaging critically with Tolkien material and being like, you know, within this fantasy realm, yeah, orcs are bad. But obviously that like the species or race of the character should not dictate the quality of personality.
We haven't even gotten to Rivendell.
So Rivendell is the sanctuary of the elves, the resting place.
The last homely house.
That's what they call it. They call it Elrond, who has been around for fucking ever.
Which his brother chose mortality, correct? No. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And his daughter.
Yes. And his daughter.
That's lady.
Which, by the way, if I could marry Aragorn, I would do it.
If I could marry Arwen, I would do it.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. But yeah, I blame my standards for men on Tolkien, not Disney.
So anyway, they go to Rivendell, and this is Bilbo's first interaction with elves.
With elves, yes, and he loves them.
He loves them, and you'll see it later in Lord of the Rings. Like whenever he decides to retire, he goes back to Rivendell.
Yes,
and I mean it's a great
stays there.
It's a great place. I remember being a kid and thinking about Rivendell, and that's one thing I did like about like the Lord of the Rings movies is how Rivendell was portrayed.
Oh
like,
my God,
the waterfalls and these beautiful columns and like these shining tiled floors. But this is where we get into another interesting race situation.
Yes.
Because dwarves and elves.
Well, elves are considered to be more kind of a higher being.
And elves look down their noses at dwarves. And dwarves, who are very grounded people, don't appreciate it.
Yes, well, dwarves are more kind of the earth, and elves are kind of more of the heavens kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's the high difference and stuff. Yeah, and so of course they're going to have issues.
But it becomes,
with each other.
like, and this is interesting because we just talked about how Tolkien's like inherent biases maybe impacted the writing of orcs and goblins, but here we have something interesting where he actually does try to go against it.
Yes,
we see him having elves and dwarves are kind of fighting. Their history and their personalities clash, and they think lowly of each other. But through the course of The Hobbit, and then later even more in Lord of the Rings. Through Legolas and Gimli, they come to an understanding of each other.
Yes.
So it's really interesting to see that he, even as he maybe wasn't aware of what he was doing with the orcs and goblins, he very consciously made a choice to kind of push back against the idea that someone's race determines
I kind of feel like they were more kind of the, it's like these are people that we don't necessarily like, but they're our allies in war, so they're supposed to be helping us to like put aside your normal stuff.
Definitely.
And just, man up and deal with it.
So they stop at Rivendell. They have some time there.
Yeah, they have a rest. They find the moon writing on the map.
Yeah.
It's like stand at the great stone where the thrush knocks. The last light of Dorne's they will try to pop the keyhole, and
so they get their big clue.
Yes.
It's interesting. It's interesting, and this is a sidebar.
Plot device.
It's interesting, a sidebar here. So I've recently started a DMing for a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. It's a very recent. We've only had three meetings since we started, and I'm doing the DM work, but I'm also playing a character because there's only 4 of us. But I've never done it before.
You a rogue.
I'm a bard.
That was the second one I was going to
Magic and music. But yeah, Karina's a rogue. Karina's always a rogue. It's fascinating to see Tolkien's influence on not only video games, like obviously you've got your Legends of Zelda, you've got your Dragon Age. Dungeons and Dragons, like wholesale would not exist without Tolkien's writing. Like where we just went through a cave and fought a bunch of goblins in our last campaign, which is literally what Bilbo and friends do next.
You mean over the hill and under the hill?
That is exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
And that would be a good segue. So my point is, like, talking about Tolkien and his influence on popular culture, but Dungeons and Dragons basically wouldn't exist without him. We had this campaign. We went into this cave and fought a bunch of dragons, which brings us to Bilbo and the dwarves going through a cave full of dragons, and brings me to my favorite part of the book, the riddles in the dark.
Okay, so can I tell you what my husband said about goblins?
Yes, tell me.
Because I was kind of discussing this with him, because he has some of his own ideas. But he's like, yeah, the goblins are the rednecks of Middle Earth.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. Okay, so this is one thing I do remember.
Well, yeah, he's like, yeah, because only a redneck would find somebody just like asleep in front of their driveway and be like, come out with a 12 gauge and then chase them down the street.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Now, this is interesting. This is one of the few things I remember from the Hobbit movie. I remember from the movie, this is one of the few things I remember from the movie, is that big, fat monster goblin that was terribly CGI'd. Because that's one of the big complaints with the Hobbit movies.
There's so much CGI.
Whenever Peter Jackson did the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, he really leaned on
budget.
practical effects.
Yeah, because he had no budget.
There was some CGI, obviously. Like, I mean, you couldn't have had the, like, ring wraiths flying through the air.
Yeah, or you couldn't have Legolas taking down an entire
giant Oliphant.
Yeah.
But the goblins and the orcs, those were masks and prosthetics. Like, he really leaned on practical effects, and they looked great. And then in The Hobbit, he had this huge budget because he'd already delivered with Lord of the Rings, and so he just slapped CGI on everything. And there was this big goblin in the scene. Yeah. I remember a big fat goblin monster
with the turkey neck.
With the turkey neck,
and I'm like, I'm gonna be sick.
It was gross looking, but it also didn't look real at all.
No. Okay, can I tell you my kind of philosophy with the Hobbit movies?
Yes.
Is that the reason they all look a little kind of ultra or meta or whatever is because they're through the kind of rose-colored glasses of recollection on Bilbo's side, and that's why like the grass is too green, the sky is too pink.
You make yourself feel better by being like, this is Bilbo telling the story.
Yes,
that's an interesting technique. I'll accept it. But yeah, so they're running from the goblins. They're under the hill. They're under the mountains here. They're fighting goblins. They're running, and then we come to my favorite chapter in the book. Which at this
point, Bilbo has to be carried because he's not fast enough.
He's a tiny boy. He's a small boy.
He's a wee boy.
He's a small barefoot boy.
He's a small cinnamon roll.
Which, can we talk about walking barefoot through Middle Earth really quick? Like, I know hobbits have, like, shoe sole type bottoms of their feet.
Dangerous.
But, like, I would never, like, sometimes I don't want to walk barefoot to the dumpster outside, you know? Like,
no.
I'm not about to walk hundreds of miles across mountains barefoot. I don't care how strong my soles and my feet are. That's ridiculous.
No.
Put on some boots, Bilbo.
I walk barefoot around my own house, and my brother is like, what is wrong with you? Put on socks.
So anyway, that was a sidebar, but I just think about that every time I think about them under the mountains, running through these craggy rocks, in the dark, and Bilbo has no shoes.
I'm like, how did he survive? And so then we get to the best part, riddles in the dark.
My very favorite. So Bilbo gets knocked out, gets left behind.
Yes.
Too dark for anyone to see.
After he is dropped.
He's dropped, he hits his head, he passes out, he wakes up, fumbles around in the dark, and then he finds something.
Can I tell you my favorite part about Riddles in the Dark?
Yes.
Is when he's like, I'm lost and I'm just going to sit here. And he's like, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit here. And he feels, and he's like, okay, I've got some tobacco, and that's something. And then he feels for his pipe, and he's like, I've got my pipe, and that's something. And then he realizes he has no matches, and his soul is crushed.
I mean, that's really relatable.
I'm like, yeah.
Relatable.
Hashtag relatable.
like he's trying to make the best of the situation, but it really just won't
It's like, okay, I have a glass, which is something, and I have a bottle, which is something, but I have no wine opener, and I am crushed, and I'm on the floor crying.
That's the point when you smash the bottle against the wall and catch the drippings, like desperate times.
I have never done that.
No?
No. Casey?
Listen. Okay, so there was this one time. It was me and my girlfriend and another one of our friends from high school, me and Karina and Jody. Karina's my girlfriend. We bought this. First off, we were at this like liquor store, and it was very late at night. I don't even remember the context of the situation, but this guy basically was like, "Oh, you're like early 20-somethings girls. You're gonna want a really sweet wine." So he's like this fancy Moscato, which like let's not even talk about the inherent misogyny in that. Like, dude.
Moving on. Hashtag feminism.
So we bought this wine, and we took it back to Jody's apartment, and we couldn't open it. Like, we put the corkscrew in and we were trying to screw it out because it was actually corked wine. It was semi-fancy.
I actually do have some semi-fancy.
We destroyed the cork and it was just stuck in the bottle. We ended up using a butter knife, jabbing it until the cork fell down into the bottle.
I was going to say, that's what I was going to say.
Absolutely trashy as hell.
Okay, so another side tangent.
This is going to be so long.
Yeah, I know. My friend and I, who actually introduced me to Lord of the Rings, the one that I wrote notes with in middle school, Allie. She and I were in Paris, and we're like, okay, yeah, we bought a bottle of wine at our hostel, and, like, we didn't have cups. So we were, like, doing, like, the Crowley Aziraphale thing where it's like one of us would take a drink, wipe the top, slide it up. Next episode!
But yeah. So anyway, sidebar. So that was sidebar. We're going back to Riddles in the Dark. So this is interesting because first off, it's the most fun chapter in the book. Honestly, I love the interaction that's happening here.
Yes.
But before we even get to the interaction, Bilbo is crawling around in the dark, completely blind, and by some crazy happenstance, you have to kind of believe in fate within Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
His hand stumbles over this ring,
small gold
ring on the ground, and
which
Bilbo,
there's not a lot of description given to this ring.
It's completely innocuous within the book. You have no idea at the time that it is going to lead up to the entire trilogy.
Lord of the Rings, yes.
The entire Lord of the Rings trilogy that everyone knows.
And you have no idea it is this article of power.
He just picks it up and puts it in his pocket.
Yeah.
Super cash.
But he does it without really... It does say he does it without realizing it.
Yeah, he just picks it up and puts it in his pocket.
So it is kind of the first
his
example.
His fingers stumble over it, pick it up, puts it in his pocket. So the ring clearly wanted to be found. It essentially abandoned Gollum. It abandoned him.
Yes.
It was tired of being in the cave. So, like, hypothetically, like, if Bilbo hadn't been there at that time, a goblin could have picked it up.
Yeah, and then
Middle Earth would have been screwed. Yeah, like, because Sauron would have had it back. Like that.
Yeah, just like that.
So it's interesting that you have to kind of believe, like, whether you believe in real life or not in fate. Yeah. Like, within these books, obviously, destiny is a thing.
It could also be, that whole the Lord moves mystery.
But yeah, so Bilbo picks up the ring, puts it in his pocket.
Yeah.
And continues wandering through the darkness. Like, it's a very minimal moment, and you have no idea how critical it is.
It says it was a turning point in his career, which this is where I got into. I took a whole class on fairy tales in college, and so like a part of the whole fairy tale genre is that it teaches children you don't always have to do what's good, but you have to do what is appropriate to survive in the real world. Yes. And so this is kind of where Bilbo goes from doing what is good to doing what is appropriate because of. And some people argue it is the influence of the ring that does this. Yeah. And I'm like, no, that's the sass at the end of the book.
So anyway, Bilbo picks up this ring, continues to wander, and eventually finds himself at the edge of this pond.
Yes.
And that's where
he literally stumbles into it.
He stumbles into it, splashing into the water, and that's when Gollum hears him.
Yes.
And he meets Gollum. Now, Gollum is one of the creepiest and most interesting characters in fantasy.
Yes.
In my opinion.
I agree. Which, a Gollum, traditionally, in traditional fairy tale
like a Gollum, Golem,
yes,
is a Jewish,
very much so,
a very, very Jewish, it is a magically formed creature out of clay or rock.
Yeah, made out of clay or rock that has a curse in its chest.
And it will attack people.
Yes. Based on the person who casts the curse.
Now that's Golem.
Yes.
And I think that's probably where Tolkien got the name.
Most likely.
But he changed it to Gollum.
Yes.
Which is the noise that Smeagol makes
whenever he
chokes.
Props to Andy Serkis for that one.
Oh my god.
Phenomenal. Andy Serkis, we love you.
Andy Serkis, please listen to our podcast.
Please listen to our podcast, Andy Serkis. We love you.
At any rate, Gollum used to be essentially a hobbit. He was they called him river folk. They were more interested in water than hobbits are. And he lived at the base of a mountain, and the ring corrupted him, and he becomes this creature that lives within the mountains.
Because the ring extended his life. And who among us, if they had like a 500-year-long life, would not go crazy?
Honestly, living 500 years sounds awful to me.
I know, it sounds awful.
I don't want that.
Do you know how many dogs I would... No, I can't do it. Can't do it.
So anyway, he meets Gollum, and we come to my favorite thing, something that I've seen in Tolkien and I've seen in other, like, contemporaries of his, but not more modern fantasy. Riddle games.
Which totally needs to be in more modern fantasy.
It really should be in more modern fantasy because I love it. They sit there and they do these riddles back and forth, And, you know,
and if Bilbo wins, he will get the way out. And if Gollum wins,
he gets to eat Bilbo.
Yeah. So there's a lot on the line.
There's a lot on the line here. And Bilbo doesn't mean to, but he cheats.
Yeah.
He shoves his hands in his pockets while he's trying to think of a riddle. He feels the ring that he didn't even register that he picked up earlier. And he says, what have I got in my pocket?
Yeah. Because he's like, what the hell?
And he's just thinking out loud. He's not actually saying that it's his next riddle, but Gollum takes it as the riddle.
Yeah, but Gollum says, ask us a question.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bilbo does what Gollum asks. So Gollum was the one that originally stepped outside the bounds of the riddle game.
That's an interesting perspective. I like that.
Yeah, so Bilbo at this point is doing what is appropriate to survive.
Not necessarily what's right.
Exactly, which is why I wanted to bring that up before we got to this.
So Bilbo asks, what have I got in my pocket? Of course Gollum can't guess what he's got in his
string
pocket.
or nothing. And Gollum also cheats by doing 2 guesses at once.
String or nothing.
Yeah.
And he's wrong. So Bilbo gets to leave. He gets to show Bilbo the way out.
Yeah.
And it's only after when Gollum realizes that he's lost his precious, the ring.
His ring.
That he knows what was in
Which
Bilbo's pocket.
Gollum tries to trick Bilbo into just staying at the side of the lake when he goes to go find his precious, because he's like, oh, I know I made this deal, but I'm going to eat him anyway. Which that is going outside the bounds of a deal, which again in fairy tales is a big no-no.
Big no-no.
Big no-no in fairy
There
tales.
are very specific rules within fantasy. Like, if you make a deal with somebody, you have to adhere to it out of honor.
Yes.
Essentially, fairy tales work on honor, like Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
Like, if she guesses his name, she wins, regardless of the fact that he's way more powerful than she is.
Yeah.
But she guessed his name, so she won.
And he was so mad, he literally tore himself to pieces.
Yes. So, like, honor is a big deal in fantasy, and the fact that Gollum was not willing to be honorable is an interesting point. And I think it's interesting that the fact that Gollum was not honorable is essentially what leads him to the conclusion that Bilbo has his ring.
Yes, exactly.
And if he didn't know Bilbo had the ring, then neither would Sauron. And so, again, helps to propel forward the entire plot of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Again, we talk about Tolkien's influences. I know a lot about fairy lore and fairy culture just because I'm fascinated by it. And so it's like I can't not see the influence in this riddle game with it, because that's something fairies like to do a lot, which I'm going to stop talking about them so they can hear me. You are a redhead, Casey.
I am. Natural born ginger. But, so we're running short on time, so let's fast forward.
Fast forward.
Bilbo's got the ring.
Yes.
He's out. They go to Mirkwood.
Okay, we're fast forwarding to Mirkwood.
Most of it's just escaping from goblins at this point.
And Thranduil.
There's a lot of running
the drama queen.
Goblins.
Yeah.
And we reach Mirkwood. Now, Thranduil is the father of Legolas, the king of Mirkwood.
And he is never actually named in The Hobbit. He's just called the Elven King.
Right. He's not named until Lord of the Rings. Or maybe in the appendices.
He's named in the appendices.
Yeah, so he's
not. By the way, Lee Pace also fantastic job.
Did a fantastic job. But again, we get back to this elf versus dwarf thing. But unlike Elrond, where Elrond and Thorin are able to come to kind of an accord, Thranduil and Thorin cannot handle it
because there is a darkness lying over the woods of Mirkwood
because of Smaug.
Yes, because of Smaug.
So basically, Thranduil blames Thorin. For the problems that Mirkwood is having because of the dragon who stole his hold.
Yeah. And this kind of goes into the whole stone tape theory, where it's just like if there are bad things that happen at a place, bad will come of it. Right. Which is the most general.
So this is another thing that I really enjoy and that I was actually pretty okay with in the movie is whenever the dwarves have to go through the barrels on the river.
Can I talk about Thorin's sass for a second?
Yes.
When Thranduil is interrogate him, and he's like, why did you attack our people? He's like, I don't know, we were starving. And every answer is just like, I don't know, we were starving. I don't know, we were starving.
Because there were spiders.
Yeah.
Before this,
which, by the way, that is probably my biggest fear is giant spiders.
Nobody likes giant spiders. Nobody likes them. Like, I remember reading Lord of the Rings, and reading about Shelob and being so upset. And I saw the movie, and I was like, this is my worst.
couldn't watch that part of the movie. I'm like, nope.
So there's similar spiders in Mirkwood Forest, and that's actually how they get captured by the elves, right? It's because the spiders get them. Bilbo gets them away from the spiders, and then they they're weakened, and they get captured by the elves. So Bilbo actually does become useful at this point. Like, he did not help them with the trolls. Gandalf saved everybody. But Gandalf doesn't show up when everyone's wrapped up in spider webs.
And it does say there is a moment that Bilbo is like, I wish Gandalf was here, but I know if anything is going to happen, it has to be me.
And so he saves them all from the spiders, but they're weak, and the elves then come. option.
Yeah. Bilbo steps up.
Bilbo finally steps up.
Which the barrel thing
After
is genius.
he's got the ring, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It gives him this confidence that he didn't have previously.
Yes. And he's wearing it constantly, so he's not caught by the
Yes,
elves.
the ring renders, as I'm sure you know because pop culture, the ring renders you invisible. And that's how he essentially saves them from the spiders.
Yes.
It's also how he gets them to the barrels later.
Which, yeah, when he's fighting the spiders, he's like, you guys save yourselves, I'll draw them off and just sting them with my sword.
He
and that's how
essentially
Sting gets
uses
his sword.
Gandalf.
Yeah.
He essentially uses Gandalf's technique from Trolls.
Yeah.
He learns from that, and he distracts.
Yes.
It's the same trope
Yes.
replayed. So it's interesting in the terms of to see a replay or see the same motif come back again later.
Yes.
So
Only
Bilbo
by
draws the
another
spiders
character.
off, but they still are captured by the elves. Thranduil and Thorin have a bit of a back and forth.
Have a bit of a back and forth about why did you attack our people? We were starving.
There's a
We
lot of
didn't
sass
attack.
involved.
A lot of sass.
And Thranduil basically sends them all to the dungeons. And that's when Bilbo comes back in with his ring, and he loads
Yes.
everybody into barrels,
Yes.
rolls them down into the river, which I enjoyed how the movie did this. I
Yes.
did.
I loved it. It was perfect because he gets everybody down. He's like, wait a second.
Bilbo had a plan, but it wasn't completely solid.
Yeah. He's like, I got to A and B, and then C kind of got a little fuzzy.
Luckily, it still works out
Yes.
for him. They all get down to Lake Town.
Yes, they all get down to Lake Town, which surprises a lot of the elves who were in charge of the girls. We're like, wait a second.
Yeah, no one was anticipating that. No one ever expects the Spanish Inquisition, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and can I talk about how much I despise the master?
Absolutely.
He's such a little.
awful. Now, but
He's a politician. That's why I don't like him.
he's a politician, but this is where we get into some interesting things. Another fantasy trope here
Yes.
is prophecy.
Oh yeah, which Gandalf is rumored to have that ability.
Gandalf is rumored to have that ability. They get to Lake Town. There's specifically a prophecy about Smaug
Yes.
and how Smaug will be defeated,
Yes, and the king returning under the mountain.
and the king returning under the mountain. So all
And
of
the
this,
lake shall flame and burn. Where is it? The king beneath the mountain, the king of carven stone, the lord of silver fountains shall come into his own. His crown shall be upholden, his harp shall be restrung, his halls shall echo golden to songs of yore resung. The woods shall wave on mountains and grass beneath the sun. His wealth shall flow in fountains and the rivers golden run. The streams shall run in gladness, the lakes shall shine and burn. All sorrow fail and sadness at the mountain king's return. Page 182.
there you go. So basically, there's this whole thing. So they are very close to the mountains at this point.
Yes.
They go to the mountains.
They go to the Lonely Mountain, yes.
They go to the Lonely Mountain, and this is where we find our first conflict within
Yes.
our merry band, because Bilbo finds the Arkenstone.
Oh yeah. First he steals the golden cup.
Or
which,
first he steals the golden cup. Yes,
to prove that the treasure is
he's a
still there.
burglar. He's
Yeah.
a burglar. That's why they brought it. Because Smaug is a dragon, and dragons
Yeah.
hoard.
And then Smaug is pissed because he's like, there is a cup missing.
yeah, dragons also are very good about keeping inventory.
Apparently, yes. If you
So-
need an inventory person, call a dragon.
So he talks with Smaug for a while. He steals the golden cup, and of course, when he talks to Smaug, he doesn't give him his name.
No, which names are very important
In
fairy
fantasy.
tales. You never want to give anybody your
Well,
name.
but this to me, every time I read this scene, it makes me think of the Odyssey.
Yes.
Because they're sitting.
Oh my gosh, I never
it's
thought of
it's
that.
The Cyclops, and the Cyclops
Yes.
is asking who Odysseus is, and he says, "I'm no one." He gives no
Yes.
one as his name, and Bilbo does kind of the same thing here with Smaug.
Where it's like you don't want to refuse a dragon your name because then it will offend them and they'll burn you.
Right.
But you don't want to give a dragon your name because
Then they
names,
have power.
yeah, names have power over the people who hold them. Which this is still something that has.
This is still prevalent.
Yes,
in
this is
fantasy.
still very prevalent literature, especially like the best way I heard it explained was in Jim Butcher novels, the Harry Dresden series.
Yeah.
Because he's like names of power. Human names change over time because humans change a lot. But if
Right.
you get a being that's been
Same
around
for
for a long time, they don't redefine themselves as often.
Right.
So if they have power over what defines you,
So this
then you're
was
in
some
trouble.
wisdom on Bilbo's part
Yes.
to choose not to give his name. It was very Odysseus, like Odysseus called himself nobody.
Exactly, yes.
Bilbo did not offer a name to
Or
Smaug.
Arya Stark.
So this interaction with Smaug is very interesting. He takes the golden cup to prove himself. The dwarves are thrilled.
Yeah, they're like, woo!
They're very proud of him. And of course, I think we
And that's when the treasure sickness starts.
That's when the treasure sickness starts.
And Thorin becomes the biggest drama queen.
Dwarves. See, this goes back to like assigning characteristics to a race just because they're a race, which is an unfortunate implication. But the fact of the matter is, dwarves have a greed level and have a specific craving for treasure.
Yeah, dwarves crave treasure, but it does say a lot in the book that there is a sickness on that treasure just because of the dragon brooding over it for so long.
Right.
60 years.
There's a certain power given to it by the value that has been assigned by a dragon, which is a very powerful, long-living creature.
Yes.
So the dwarves are starting to feel this sickness, and that's when Bilbo finds the Arkenstone.
Yes, and Bilbo is not exactly
immune.
Is not exactly immune to the lure of the Arkenstone, but the treasure sickness usually. He's like, well, he does what's appropriate. Mm-hmm. He's like, I was told I could choose my 1/14th, so I'm going to take this.
Right. So he takes the Arkenstone, and Thorin is desperate to find it.
Desperate, because this goes back again to the whole predestination back in the Middle Ages, where it's just like, because you're of this birth, you have the right to rule. And so the stone is a symbol of Thorin's right to rule the dwarves of Erebor.
Right. So he is desperate to find it. Bilbo is hiding it. There's a lot of tension within the group at this point.
Yes.
And this is when we get, with this as our context, that's when we start to get into the battle. Which most of the Lord of the Rings books have at least one intense battle.
Yes. At this point, Lake Town has been destroyed by Smaug.
Because he was mad after the cup.
He was. He thought that they were sent by the people of Lake Town. So
he destroyed it.
Which is why jumping to conclusions is a bad thing.
You can't tell that to a dragon, though.
No, you can't. You can't reason with a dragon. Also at this point too, Bilbo was exhibiting a lot of sass towards the dwarves because they're like, "Oh, you're not doing anything." He's like, "Excuse me, I got burned by a flipping dragon."
Right.
Smaug has burned Lake Town and he has fallen, and it says even to like this day in the book, people will not go to where Smaug has fallen. Because it's bad juju.
That's another prophecy.
Yeah.
Is there was a prophecy that specifically Smaug would be felled by this one man.
Yes. Bard.
Bard.
All hail Bard.
Cheers to Bard.
Cheers to Bard.
So Bard actually...
Cheers to Luke Evans, too.
So Bard actually... There was a creep. Was it a bird? It was a thrush.
It was a thrush. It was the thrush that stood by the stone and knocked.
It was the thrush that stood by the stone and knocked that told him where to aim his arrow in order to fell Smaug.
And because the reason Bard understood the thrush was because he was the descendant of Gideon, who originally tried to fell Smaug when Dale was destroyed.
There's so much history in Lord of the Rings
books.
They're so intense. I think our next episode will be shorter because the's not as much backstory.
No, agreed. Yes.
But yeah, so the dragon is dead.
Yes.
Thanks to Bard, as was prophesied.
And the people start calling for Bard to be the new king, which the master is like, whoa.
I'm in charge here.
You can't.
Excuse me.
Exactly. You can't say it in any other.
The master's a bitch.
Which, by the way, in the movies, the guy with the unibrow, I can't remember his name. The master does not die, but the gentleman who has the unibrow kind of takes the master's place in the movie. So just imagine Stephen Fry's.
Also, Stephen Colbert has a cameo in the movie.
Stephen Colbert, listen to our podcast.
Stephen Colbert loves Lord of the Rings.
I know.
And we love Stephen Colbert.
We love Stephen Colbert. I especially love your interview with Smaug.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So the Battle of Five Armies. Let's move forward.
Which would be the armies of Dane. The goblins. The wargwolves. The elves. And the men of the New Dale. Which will Lake Town, but will become the New Dale because Dale gets rebuilt. Bard becomes the king of Dale. Yes, Bard will become the king of New Dale. Right. So
there's these five armies. They're all duking it out here.
Well, Bilbo tries to prevent said war because
Bilbo he's a pacifist. He doesn't like fighting. He's already had to deal with fucking giant spiders and
Yeah.
golem and goblins
He's like,
and
y'all.
dragons.
He's like, y'all, I'm tired.
I don't want to do this.
I'm done. I don't want to fight these people of Lake Town
Thorin
because
is
the
not
whole...
having it.
No, Thorin is not
Thorin
having it.
is bloodthirsty. Thorin is ready to fight, and I think part of the problem is that he doesn't know where the Arkenstone is.
Yeah, I think Thorin is more selfish because of the curse that's on the treasure. He gets more and more greedy and more selfish.
Thorin
like,
gets wild at this point. And, like, I think a big part of it is the Arkenstone. He doesn't know where it is, and Bilbo wants to prevent the fight, but he's not willing to tell Thorin where the Arkenstone is.
Yeah.
Which I think is a huge problem, because I think if Thorin knew Bilbo had the Arkenstone, he wouldn't be projecting his ire at these other...
See, I think if Thorin knew Bilbo had been withholding the Arkenstone from him, I think Bilbo would have had a sword in his gut.
You think he would have killed Bilbo?
I think he would have killed Bilbo.
But there wouldn't have been a battle.
That's true.
I mean, it comes down to that whole needs of the few versus needs of the... I understand Bilbo was scared, and I'm not saying necessarily that it would have been the best choice to tell Thorin.
Yeah, but
it could have prevented the battle.
I understand why Bilbo gave the stone to the elves and the people of Dale, because he's like, hey, I'm giving you this. This is the thing Thorin wants above anything. If he's going to bargain for anything, it'll be this. And so Bilbo was doing his best to avoid bloodshed as much as he could.
What's right in the situation versus what is morally correct.
Yeah. What's right versus what is appropriate.
So, the battle happens. And this is also interesting because modern properties, modern fantasy, modern sci-fi, stakes are not always super high.
No.
People die.
Yeah.
But they come back. Especially comic books. I'm not going to spoil any comic books or comic book movies.
Or Supernatural
TV show. Yeah, there's a lot of people who die, but a lot of times they come back. You see a comic book, they kill off Spider-Man, he comes back. Yeah. They kill off Iron Man, he comes back. You know, it's fine.
Coulson.
But you get into this has stakes.
This has actual
people
stakes.
People die and they stay dead.
Because see, here's the thing that was going to go happen with this battle. This whole battle was not about, like, they didn't start fighting until the goblins and the wargs showed up. Mm-hmm. Because
it was a tense situation.
It was a tense situation.
But the joining of the goblins and wargs
is what started the battle. It is not like the movie where they started fighting each other first and then changed their minds.
Right.
You hear me, Peter Jackson?
Listen, he did his best. He did a good job with the trilogy. So
I do have issues. I mean, like, I understand why they added Toriel because there are no women in this at all.
For fuck's sake, Tolkien, have you ever heard of a woman? Have you? Women.
He married.
They exist.
He's married.
I know, but like, I mean, okay, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, like, not including the movie where they have Toriel. We've got Arwen, Galadriel, Éowyn.
I love Éowyn.
That's it. There are 500 fucking characters.
Rosie
doesn't do anything. There are like 500 characters in Lord of the Rings, and there are like 4 named women.
Luthien.
And, well, that's Silmarillion.
Okay. Well,
like,
we're not counting Silmarillion.
Within the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Within The Hobbit, there are none.
There are no women in The Hobbit.
0 women.
But again, if you're looking at this whole idea of this is based off of experience in war, of course there weren't any women!
It's kind of that thing I see it constantly.
But still, at the same time, it pisses me off.
You constantly see it, though. You see it with women, you see it with people of color. I recently... This is a complete sidebar.
Tangent!
I'm a little tipsy at this point.
That's the point of this podcast.
My alarm to wake me up in the morning is a song called Jamaican Inspector Man, which is from Psych the Musical. I know. Shut up. So in Psych the Musical, there's a company putting on Jack the Ripper.
I remember this, and the inspector
and Gus is played by Dule Hill. God bless Dule Hill. Listen to our podcast, Dule Hill.
Listen to our podcast.
Dule Hill wants to be the inspector who like finds the Ripper, and they're like, well, this is set in turn of the century London, and Dule Hill specifically says, what, there were no black people in turn of the century London? Which makes me think the same thing. What, there were no women in Middle Earth?
There were no women in Middle Earth? What?
Yeah, it's that same concept. It's like the story was written by a straight white man, so it's from the perspective of a straight white man. I love it, but I do have criticisms of his dealings of women, his dealings of people of color.
The only woman that I remember there being mention of in The Hobbit is Belladonna Took, his mother, who there's some like one or two lines about, and then the only other woman is Bethelia Sackville Baggins, who keeps stealing his food.
His stuff. But there's no mention of even like Arwen. No mention of Arwen.
Even
Elrond's
though,
daughter.
yeah, because
there's no mention of there's no mention of Legolas's mother, Thranduil's wife. There's no mention.
There has never ever been any mention ever of Legolas's
mother.
Like
Tolkien is female blind. He's also race blind. Like he doesn't tell us about other races. He doesn't tell, and I mean he's dealing with dwarves and elves, so he can't think of people of color. But like it's very much white man's world fantasy.
Yes,
and like people built on it and people have made it better. But it is a little depressing when you're sitting here listening to all of this happen, and you're like, there are no women here. There are no people of color here. And any people who are, like, insinuated to be of color are the bad guys. The orcs and the goblins and the, you know.
But that was 1930s England.
Anyway, it's just a common criticism of the time period, and obviously, he was of his time.
If it's a criticism of the time period, you can't really blame the author for being of the time period.
Well, but it still goes back to that, there weren't any black people in turn of the century
There
London.
weren't any black people in turn of the century London? What?
So, there are criticisms we had, and I do appreciate the addition of Toriel to the movie.
Yes, I do
because there needed to be some females. Like, it's just like a sausage party.
Although, however, the love story, I did not need.
I did not need the love story, although it did add a certain level of drama to the Fili and Kili deaths.
It did. Although I am sorely disappointed in the Fili and Kili deaths because in the book it states they fell in defense of Thorin.
And he still died, which is super tragic.
I know.
Because it's like they gave their lives to protect him.
And he still died.
It didn't matter.
Which is poor, unfortunately.
But Thorin doesn't die immediately.
No. He dies.
Thorin is grievously wounded and taken back to the tent, and Bilbo gets to talk to him before he dies. Which is
the first time I read that, I cried hysterically because he's like, "Look, I realize how much of a bitch I have been."
Thorin is not under the influence of the gold sickness anymore. He's dying. He sees his mistake.
I wish to part with you in friendship,
and
I'm like,
apologizes. It's a very touching moment.
I have to find it now.
love Lord of the Rings, and I love The Hobbit. The Hobbit is a children's book. It does not have nearly as many emotional gut punches as The Lord of the Rings does. But that moment when Bilbo and Thorin speak together before Thorin passes, it is an emotional gut punch.
Farewell, good thief, he said. I go now to the halls, waiting to sit beside my fathers until the world is renewed. Since I leave now all gold and silver and go where it is of little worth, I wish to part in friendship from you, and I would take back the words and deeds at the gate. Bilbo knelt on his knee with sorrow. Farewell, king under the mountain, he said. This is a bitter adventure, if it must end so, and not a mountain of gold can amend it. If they were not dating, they should have been.
So now we're getting to fanfiction.
But it's just,
It is an emotionally powerful moment. Thorin, and I think they did a good job of it in the movie.
They did.
Thorin forgiving Bilbo for his quote-unquote slight.
Yes.
And Bilbo accepting that and also letting Thorin know that he has not only valued this adventure, but the companionship
it is more than any Baggins deserves.
It's a really, really good moment.
If more of us valued wine and song over gold.
The interesting thing about The Hobbit is that, for me, after the Battle of Five Armies, when Thorin passes and Bilbo talks to him, I'm done. Like, that's fine. Like, narratively speaking, like, I'm good being done there. I don't need to go back and hear about Vita Sackville Baggins stealing Bilbo's shit.
Yeah, well,
I understand that it's interesting, especially considering there's a continuing story beyond it.
Yeah.
But, like, from a narrative perspective, like, that catharsis that Bilbo and Thorin have with each other before the end is all I need.
Because they were really, really close.
They were.
And I'm thinking, like, if that was, like, you or Allie or Mallory or anybody like that, I'd be, like, beside myself. But it's so sweet. But, like, okay, so after the Battle of the Five Armies and Thorin's passing and Fili and Kili's passing, the throne passes to Dane, his cousin. His cousin Dane. And Dane honors his agreements with Bilbo. Dane seems to be far more
This is a nice thing because, you've got your modern fantasy series like Game of Thrones, which I don't watch, but I think Liz Liz likes a little bit.
My husband loves it, and so I know a lot about it. But anything,
I don't watch it; it's too rapey for me.
Yeah, agreed. Way too rapey.
But like,
I'm like, George R.R. Martin, be ashamed.
A lot of the modern fantasy deals with like betrayals, double dealing, people reneging on deals.
But
Dane doesn't do that.
Dane acknowledges the whole reason he has this throne and this kingdom is because of the sacrifices that Thorin and company, including Bilbo, made, especially Bilbo.
Yes.
Which is very sweet. He offers him like a 14th of the treasure, and Bilbo's like, no, give it to the people of Lake Town, which proves the humility of hobbits again. And he's like, I will only take 2 chests that a pony can carry. That's it. I'm like, there's literally a mountain full of gold.
Listen.
And he's like, just 2 chests is good.
Like, even context-wise, like, Bilbo takes 2 chests, and you're like, wow, that's so humble. But then you look at Lord of the Rings, and Bilbo is, like, living in luxury in the Shire.
Yeah.
Bilbo didn't need more than 2 chests of gold.
No, he didn't need, but he recognized that. How many people nowadays, like certain people, would say, hey, we have this whole mountain full of gold, do you want it? And some people would just be like, I don't know how I'm going to get it back, but hell yeah, I want it. How many people can say that they're humble
and that
enough?
goes back to the hobbits are the best bearers for this
they are.
ring, because the humility and, like, the lack of greed that hobbits have protects them somewhat. It's kind of like whenever you're building a character in Dungeons and Dragons or a video game, hobbits have like an extra level of protection against something that corrupts.
Yeah.
Because they're not
Or
great.
you're playing that Hogwarts mystery, so you try and get as much empathy as possible.
Hogwarts mystery. I've stopped playing.
That's a different rant entirely.
I get so mad because I run out of energy. And
I know, so fast, and then you have to pay for the freaking jewel.
Fuck it, man.
Okay.
So anyway,
we
the
just had our
battle was
first
done.
effort.
The battle, that was not the first one. You missed it. I've said it at least 3 times. I'm sorry. This is a rated R podcast. Fight me.
I try not to because I know my mom's listening.
My mom and I curse at each other more than anyone else.
My mom's a preschool teacher. She's going to be shocked that
My
I say
dad
yes.
is a pastor. He would be
That is
upset,
true.
but he probably won't listen.
No, because he probably doesn't know what a podcast is.
He is a little bit old-fashioned. So anyway, sidebar.
Yes.
So going back to the novel, so the Battle of 5 Armies happens. Dane takes over. Bilbo gets his 2 chests. He goes home.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Tolkien is the only one who does this. Like, you watch a movie, it ends when they defeat the battle. And that's it.
Yeah.
Tolkien does this not only in Hobbit, but in the Lord of the Rings. When they get home, they have to deal with the consequences of their actions at home.
Weird.
For Bilbo,
I know.
It's the fact that Gandalf didn't fucking lock up.
Yeah, and everybody has presumed he's been dead.
Everyone assumed he was dead, and they stole all of his stuff.
Well, they sold it, technically. I mean, I feel like if you were any kind of...
Unless you know someone's dead, it's stealing.
Yeah.
They didn't know he was
Everybody
dead.
stole all of the shit.
So Peter Sackville Baggins is over here selling his crap, stealing his silverware.
The silver spoons never
One of the 2 mentioned women in the book, a total asshole, is taking all of his stuff. Yeah. Bilbo has to come home and manage it. He's pretty chill about it, though, because at this point he's dealt with trolls, goblins, giant spiders, dragons.
And see, it does say that in the book, once most people realize this was done in an accident, they give it up. But the Sackville Baggins...
they're hobbits, and most hobbits are pretty humble and pretty
But the Sackville Baggins sound like they're kind of more of the, air quotes, proper kind of hobbits.
Yeah, they get Frodo trouble. Even later.
They get Frodo in trouble,
We're gonna have to do one of these on Lord of the Rings property. Right?
Yeah.
We've brought it up so many times in this one. We're gonna have to.
We're gonna have to do multiple episodes on Lord of the Rings. I apologize in advance.
It'll be fine. Point is, Bilbo gets home.
Yes.
He has changed.
Yes, he has. He's
the
not the
hero's
Hobbit
journey. He's not the Hobbit he once was. He used to be a homebody. He used to be seeking comfort.
Well, that's true of most portal or even just journey literature. Like,
Hero's
look at Alice.
Journey is the most traditional story there is.
Yeah, look
this
at
is
Alice.
very much a very easy access for anybody to read.
Yeah.
Is because it's like we all know the story. It's like you start out as nothing and you don't want and you don't care. And then you realize that you have a greater purpose and you do things and you change the character and you grow and you learn things. That is the most baseline of fantasy.
Which could be, life.
Yeah.
You learn stuff
life.
and you change.
And that's why it's so touching. Like, you read it and you're like, Bilbo is an entirely different person than he was before.
Yeah.
And he's better for it.
Yeah. And I'm an entirely different person now than I was a year ago. And so are you.
Right. And, like, just watching that growth within that character and recognizing that as something that can happen in real life, it's good. It's really nice.
Yeah.
has a story, the hero's journey. Like, I love portal fiction, which, Alice and, like, Labyrinth.
Well, even
and, like,
Alice says she's like, I knew how I was this morning, but I've changed a couple times since then.
And this is not portal fiction, but it still has that hero's journey and that character development.
Yeah.
And Bilbo is better for it, I think.
Yes.
Bilbo is open to new experiences. Bilbo is more welcoming to strangers.
Yes.
Bilbo is willing to take in his nephew.
Yes, Frodo.
And raise
little
him,
Frodo.
which he probably wouldn't have done
Which,
otherwise.
by the way, little itty bitty hobbits are adorable.
Baby Hobbit.
Baby hobbits.
Baby Hobbit.
What is the... Yes, because the Hobbit ends with a visit from Gandalf and...
Again, Gandalf bookends. Gandalf bookends.
Bookends, yes.
Story.
It's a visit from Gandalf and Balin, and Gandalf tells him, he's 276. Gandalf says, Mr. Baggins, I'm very fond of you, but you are only quite a little fellow in a wide world after all. And Bilbo, laughing, says, oh, thank goodness.
Which, if that doesn't sum it up, I don't know what does.
Yes.
Bilbo has this grand adventure.
Yes.
He sees things he would have never seen if he had stayed at home. And he still maintains that humility of, I'm just a small person in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. And
which is important for all of us.
Yes. Seeing the wide world and realizing we're just one person in this world. We're 7 billion people.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Perspective.
But perspective is good. Bilbo has the perspective. We try to learn from that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the Hobbit. What would you say, Liz, in terms of how many bottles would you give?
How many bottles would I give it?
On a scale of 1 to 5.
1 to 5. 1 being the worst and 5 being
1
the
being
best.
shitty $12 sangria, and 5 being Dom Perignon,
which I've never had.
It's not actually that good.
Have you had it?
So my brother, this I probably shouldn't say this on a podcast, but I'm going to. I have 6 brothers, so you won't know which one it was. One of my brothers stole a bottle of it from the place he worked.
Oh my gosh, I lead a boring life.
It lit up. The label lit up. It was ridiculous. It was not that good. Like, it's a very dry champagne, and I was like, fine.
So then I would probably like it.
You might like it, but it's still not worth hundreds of dollars or whatever. I don't even know what it is.
Brand. It's a branding.
Dom Perignon. But yeah, I've had Dom Perignon. It's not
okay,
worth it.
so it's like $5 bottom shelf vodka versus
Grey Goose.
Grey Goose.
How many bottles would you give the Hobbit?
Can we do like
you can do half bottle.
Okay, half bottle is 4.5.
4.5 bottles.
4.5.
I would give the Hobbit 3.5 bottles. Mainly because I'm a stickler and I don't believe in giving anything 5 bottles because I'm like there's no perfect literature.
Yeah.
But the Hobbit was very important to me as a child.
Yeah.
It's very important to me as an adult.
I'm exceptionally sentimental, and I see. Here's the thing: I do some writing. I do some writing of my own, and my writing has been heavily influenced by the Tolkien that I read when I was a child.
I'll drink to that. So, Liz gives it 4.5 bottles. I give it 3.5 bottles. Either way, it's a pretty good rating.
Yes.
We definitely recommend you read
Which
The Hobbit.
averages 4 bottles out of 5.
4 out of 5 bottles. That's not bad. Not bad at all.
I'm proud of myself for being able to do math.
So be sure to check out The Hobbit.
Yes.
And thank you so much for listening. We'll see you
very
next time.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. For more information, visit us at litliteraturePodcast.com or on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And remember, too much work and no vacation deserves at least a small libation. Cheers!